This Jeep Renegade has a turbo problem, and in this video we're going to try and diagnose it and fix it. Hi there guys, welcome to another Ross Perry Productions video. In this video I'm going to be working on my 2015 Jeep Renegade, and this is the model with the 1.4 litre Multiair turbo engine from Fiat. So this engine's actually found in quite a lot of the Fiat range as well as Alfa Romeo and the smaller Jeeps. Now it's quite a good power unit, and we've had about 20,000 kilometres of trouble-free driving from the car, and this is the first issue we've actually had. So the car has done about 75,000 kilometres, just to give you a bit of an insight to the car, and it's been pretty well maintained and well kept as well. So I got a phone call from my wife the other day, and she was about 40 minutes away from home, and she said that the car just started making some really loud noises, lost a lot of power and was pretty undrivable. So of course I jumped in the car and went to meet her. There wasn't too much I could do roadside, so we made sure we got the car straight back, and I've had a quick look over it, but I haven't actually diagnosed the problem yet. I've just narrowed it down to the turbocharger. So I thought I'd make this video to help you navigate around where the turbo is and how we can actually get the turbo off and start to look inside it, and hopefully we'll be able to fix the problem, and I'll show you that entire process. So we'll just start off by showing you around the engine and where the turbo is, and of course how to remove the plastic cover on top as well. Now in a moment I'll actually start the car up so you can hear the noise that we're actually encountering, but first off I'll actually remove the black plastic cover so we can take a closer look. But before I do that, I'll just quickly talk you through the engine bay so you can check your car is the same model, or you might be looking at this for a different one of the cars that this engine's found in. So just starting over the left hand side, we've got our brake fluid reservoir. This is your air box where your air filter's found, leading into your induction system. Obviously the main engine block is here in the middle, and that is our oil top-up location. Now your turbo is actually positioned around here, but we'll take a closer look at that in a second. Your radiator is found just under that plastic cover there. And then this is our coolant top-up reservoir with our battery. That's one of our fuse boxes, and this is the windscreen washer top-up reservoir as well. So like I say, I'm going to take the black plastic cover off, and that's done by two 10mm bolts there and there. It's relatively easy to do, and let me just readjust the camera and show you that now. With the plastic cover off, we can obviously see a lot more of the engine, so I'll just talk you through a few bits. We've actually got our 4 coil packs here, which hide our 4 spark plugs underneath for each of the cylinders. Now looking over the top there, we've actually got our common injection rail down there as well that you can just about see. So therefore that is our intake side, main combustion chamber, and then exhaust side is this side. And you can see our turbo straight down here. So nice and easy to get to on this car. It's not hidden away at all. It does have a heat shroud around it that we'll have to remove. And obviously this is the induction system that goes to the air box there that I pointed out earlier. So it's actually a Garrett turbo, so it's a quality part, and it's obviously used on quite a few different cars. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the engine running and the noise that we're actually getting from the turbo. So not sure if you can hear my voice over that, but it's obviously quite a distinct sound coming straight down here from the turbo. So now you've heard the horrible noise coming from this engine, we're going to start to diagnose it. And first we're going to look at the cold side of the turbo, which is the air side. So the air comes in through the air box, through the air filter, down the induction tube here, and then comes into this side here, and that's where the turbine is. So we're just going to inspect things from this angle. And to do that, we're going to first take off the lid to the air box, and then we're going to remove some of these plastic clips and some metal clips as well, just to get that induction system away from this turbo here. So we're going to need a flat screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver. So I'll start by doing the filter first. going to undo these clips here to get rid of some of these pipe works, just to get them out of the way. And they're nice and easy to do up afterwards as well. Just tuck that out of the way. There's a 10mm bolt there, we're going to undo that. Okay, with the filter box now open and the induction system up here, I can actually just use my hand and obviously make sure the engine's not hot, so I've let mine cool down. And get your hand in there and you can probably just feel around. Now I've obviously worked on a few turbos, so I know what I'm feeling for. So interestingly, so there is some shaft play, which is obviously a problem, but the main problem that I can feel is the nut isn't on the end of the turbine. So somehow that nut's come off. So what I'll do is I'll try and get the camera down there, but I don't know if you'll be able to see too much. Yep, that nut's definitely not on there. So there's two places it could have gone. It could have gone through the turbine into the turbo and potentially into the engine. That would be very bad, worst case scenario. Or there's actually a little port here leading down into this actuator. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and hopefully I'll be able to find that nut. Okay, so I've actually removed the lid of the airbox and the induction tube there, just so that we can take a better look at the turbo. Let me just put this down. And the only last thing that was holding it on was this breather pipe here, which had a steel band on, one of these, and I actually had to cut it off because I didn't want to play ball. So I'm just going to go ahead and dip the camera down there and hopefully you can see into the turbo. So what you should be seeing there is just the turbine with like the middle section, which is the spindle, and you can just see there's a thread and there should actually be a nut on the end there. And like I say, this one seems to be missing. So what's happening is that's allowing the turbine to actually run loose, and that noise is it scoring inside of this housing there. So hopefully, best case scenario, is the nut's actually gone down that port there and is just in this actuator. So I'm just going to take this off and then hopefully we'll find it. So before we go ahead and undo the 3 5mm Allen key bolts, we're actually going to take the electrical connection off first. So you just flick the yellow bit down and then you actually push the black bit in, and I'll just show you that close to the camera. So you flick that bit down there and then you give that a squeeze. So that gets your electrical connection off. Now we're going to go ahead and undo the bolts. Now I like to do this really slow because I don't want to drop any down onto the belly pan or anywhere else. So what I'll do is I'll use it with the ratchet just to loosen it off. Then I'll actually do it by hand because they shouldn't be too hard to do. Right, that's all of them loose, so now I'm just going to do the rest by hand. Now I'm just going to hold that back in, because if the nut is in there, I don't want to drop that either. Now I'm going to slowly remove. Oh, nothing dropped out. So there you go, just have a closer look at this. You have your electrical connection goes on there. And basically it's sprung out and then the electrical connection just brings it back. So it just operates like that. Okay, so take a look. I can see it. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. The nut is actually just in the bottom there. So what I'm going to do, use a magnet. And there we go. That is the nut from our turbine shaft. It's a bit oily, so that's not a good sign, so we'll try and find where that oil's come from. But this is the nut, and you'll often see they have a little bit of a shaved section. Yep. So see where that shave is there? That's when they're balancing the shaft. They just take a little nick out just in case, like where there could be an imbalance. So they've obviously balanced it, taken that nick out just because there was a bit of an imbalance. So that is the nut that we're looking for. Now, unfortunately, it's not as simple as just putting that nut back on, because it has to be torqued up, but I also need to find out if there's any other damage in there. So it's the best case scenario because we've found the nut. If If the nut had gone into the engine, then we've probably got bigger problems and the engine could be shot, but we've got the nut. So that's really good news. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of the turbo. And I've actually got a guy locally that can rebuild turbos and balance the shaft. So I can either do that, I can buy a new turbo, or I can buy a new cassette. So I need to see the rest of the damage to determine what we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the heat shield and start getting the remainder of the turbo off the car. Okay, so just a bit of a status update and also talk through some of our options. So we've removed the top of the airbox and the induction tube that goes down to the cold side of the turbo there. I've removed the air filter just so it doesn't get damaged in case I drop something on it. And we've found the source of the problem, which is the nut that goes on the spindle to the turbine there, which was down in here. So we've now got a couple of options. So one option is I take the whole turbo assembly off, which will include dropping this portion of the exhaust, and there's a couple of bolts down below, a whole load of heat shields, and that's fairly complicated to do. And then if we're going to drop the whole turbo, the easiest way to do it is actually by removing the intake manifold from the block, which would involve undoing bolts like that there. Or the other option that I'm thinking about is just removing the cold side and the cassette. So to do that, we'd have to undo this V-band, and they are sometimes a little bit difficult to do. And we'd obviously have to take this off as well. So just trying to weigh up my options, but you will see down on the base of the engine there, I've actually removed the belly pan, and I've also put the car in the air just to allow me some room to get under there. So the belly pan comes off nice and easy, just 4 10mm bolts and then 2 screws in each wheel arch. And I've just got that nice and supported. And we are going to lose some fluids, and I'll talk you through that in just a second. So here's the belly pan. Like I say, nice and easy, just 4 10mm bolts holding it up, and then a couple of screws from inside each of the wheel arches. So either way, we are going to lose some fluids. So if you look at the cassette here, so the cassette is where the balanced turbine shaft goes through. And we've got this tube here. So that's actually going back to our coolant reservoir, so we know that's the coolant side. So that's the return, and then the coolant actually comes in that side there. And then this will either be the oil flow or oil return, and then on the opposing side will be the other. So either way, we are going to lose a little bit of coolant and some oil as well. But because the turbo is nice and high on this engine, we shouldn't lose the whole lot. I've decided I'm going to try and split the turbo on the car. So don't know how successful this is going to be, but to do this, we actually leave all of the hot side of the turbo and the exhaust exactly as it is. So what we'll have to do is still disconnect most of the pipework that you'd have to do to actually remove the whole turbo, but we're actually going to try and split it on the car, which means undoing this V-belt here. But obviously you'll still see there's quite a lot of stuff connected. I'm going to start with this. There's a circlip over this side which you can just use a screwdriver on. I've got a nice little one here, and then we can start to undo the 2 10mm nuts on that side as well. Now I'm not going to change the adjustment there because that's been set up right for the car, so I'm just going to go ahead and move that out of the way so it's somewhere safe. Next thing we're going to do is start to undo these two here. So these are just the ones that we can get to, and I'm hoping, given this is a rubber pipe, we'll actually be able to get that out of the way. But we'll have to have a look at these ones here. Now this is where we are going to lose some of the fluids. So I have put a catch tray underneath the engine. So this is a 19mm at the front here, and that's a 17mm on top there. Next for the oil. So something I've just noticed, and I think this could also be part of the problem, is this is completely gunked up. This is telling me that the oil's thickened and it's stopped the oil flow. So this is very interesting. It may mean I have to take all the pipes off and blow them through and have a look why the oil has gone like that. Now it could just be that the turbo's got so hot that it's caused the oil to congeal. This is not what I'd expected to see. Right, so all three of those are off, and there's just the one on the bottom that's a little bit harder to get to, and it feels like it's two small Allen keys. So I'm just going to try and see if I can get some tools down there to get those off. So probably maybe a 6mm Allen key, we'll give that a try first. Doesn't feel like it's sitting in there right, so we might actually be a Torx bit. Bingo, we found it. So it's actually a T40 Torx bit. And just like that, it's all off. Now, first off, I really need to apologise for anyone watching this. So the camera was going for quite some time and the battery actually went flat on the camera, but because I'm trying to get this done so I can get the parts on order, I just carried on into the night and it's now the next day. So I wanted to come back and just sort of talk you through what I had done and what I found difficult. I mean, it wasn't the hardest task, and the main thing is, as you'll see, I was able to actually leave the hot side of the turbo all intact, and I was able to get the cold side and also the turbo core off of the car, which was my main aim. You notice I've started to cover in some areas, so this is obviously the air side that goes beyond from the turbo, so I just don't want any nasties dropping down in there. And also I've taken off the oil filter, which I'll talk you through in just a second to why I've done that. Now, if you notice, I've still got both of the water side pipes on. So you've got this one here, which is the return, and you've got this one here, which is the flow for the water. So that goes across horizontally. Then we've got the oil drain here, and also the oil feed pipe I've actually taken off, and I'll talk you through why I've done that in just a second. But that is one of the main issues that I've found. So when I actually took the V-belt off, I was able to actually move this, and I didn't even need to put any pressure on the turbo. It comes straight away from the hot side. It come away nice and easy. But what did happen, I'll show you in just a second, which I've had some surprises on this car. So I did find some congealed oil, which is possibly the reason why the turbo broke. So it's either the turbo broke, got really hot, congealed the oil, or the oil got congealed, blocked the port to the turbo got overheated, you know, and broke. So not really sure which was which, but yeah, I think there's sort of reason for both ways happening. Now I've also got the side of the cam belt off here as well. And the reason for that being is there is if you can just see it there, and I'll take it straight out, I've already cleaned it. There's this filter here, which is actually your cylinder head oil filter. You see it's just a bit dirty there, just where I've poked it back in. But I wanted to check that to make sure there wasn't any nasty oil up here as well. And whilst it's black, a lot of the oil is fine. I'm just putting that back into the hole down there just to stop, again, anything getting in there. And I'll also block in some other areas shortly. So that's probably about it for in here. Now, as far as I'm doing all of these, the water one's super easy. The top oil feed pipe, super easy. What was tricky was the two Torx bits holding on the drain, the oil drain. So this one, I guess, was quite easy to get to, but I didn't realise that it was open on that side, so I actually took that bolt all the way out. So if you're doing the same task, you just need to loosen the back one and undo the front one, and you can actually move that away from the turbo. And then, because I have removed the whole feed pipe, which I'll show in just a second, there was quite a few of these heat shrouds that I've had to remove from down here, but depending on your problem, you might not have to do that. But that wasn't too hard. You could get to a couple of the 10mm bolts from the top and a couple from the bottom. For the same reason I undone the cylinder head oil filter. I also undone the main oil filter, but I will be doing a full oil change and putting a new filter on as well, which I'll show you just now. So you'll see in this bucket, you've got, that's the cap to the oil filter. So this stays with the car, and then you just basically replace these paper filters. So whilst it's really black and nasty, the filter wasn't gunked up too bad, as in there was no congealing around there. So I know that the oil, albeit black and nasty, wasn't blocked through the filter. I've got my new filter there to put on, and this was, like I say, one of the main culprits. So this was either the reason or the consequence of the turbo braking. So that the bottom side there goes onto the engine block, feeds the oil up, and then drops it through that banjo head there for a banjo bolt into the top of the turbo. Now when I took this off, pretty much the whole section here to here was blocked solid. There was nothing getting through there, and it's taken me, I would say, half hour to be able to unblock that, and I actually used a strimmer wire to do that, which worked pretty well. So I just put quite a lot of WD-40 and other solutions down there to break up the congealed oil, and then just kept feeding it through. And even now, like you see, I've got a bit of rag on there. I've just got a bit of WD-40 sitting in there, just loosening up anything else, and I'll just keep making sure that's nice and clean for when we put it back on the car. Now for the turbo itself, this is what I was quite surprised at. So this is the cold side, so that's the part that actually sits in the cold side of the turbo, and you'll notice there's just a little notch there. So this notch just sits perfectly in like that, and then we actually do up the 5 bolts, and none of it was too hard to get apart. I was quite surprised. I would have thought there'd be a little bit of corrosion, it'd be hard, but as soon as I undone the 5 bolts, a little bit of a tug, that comes straight out. Now you can see from the turbine there, I've actually put the nut back on there just out of curiosity. So this is the nut that I found earlier. It's an opposing thread, which always confuses me, but that just goes straight back on there. So again, I'm not sure that was the whole problem, or if that was just a consequence of the center of the turbo core seizing up. Now how I know that seized? Because that's stayed like that, and the hot side turbine snapped straight off. So this is what I was saying, as soon as I pulled the core off of the hot side casing, this actually just fell apart, and I'm amazed this hadn't dropped into the exhaust, if I'm honest. So that just sits in there like that. So that should be a complete assembly like that. So what I've done, I've spoke to my friend, and he's actually ordered me a whole new turbo core, which looks just like this, but brand new with a full balance shaft. And just having a look there, I'll just take that back off. So just having a look in there, so that's one of the coolant ports. So that's perfectly clean all the way through. So you can actually blow coolant through that, there's no problem at all. Now if you look in there, that's the drain side, and it is blocked solid. So that goes on the bottom, and then on the top again, just blocked solid. So no oil has been getting through that at all. So just to show you through some of the other stuff, the larger banjo bolts there, they're the coolant ones. I will put new compressible washers on there, and then we've got the smaller ones there, which are for the oil. I need to make sure they're perfectly clean before I go back, put it all back together, so we don't have the same problem again. This is a band I had to cut off. This was the one that goes basically on here and was going down that air pipe on the charge air side. Really tricky to get off, so I'll have to get a new one of those. That's no problem. And that is the V-belt that actually holds the hot side of the turbo to the turbo core. So like I say, it's been quite easy to identify this. It's quite a distinctive looking one, and I've managed to get the exact part number. There is a part number just on it there, which is the one that I've used to order the new one. That is just the cover for the cam belt there, which I showed you just to get to that cylinder head oil filter. So there you go. If you've got any questions about this, again, sorry I wasn't able to keep the camera rolling, but more than happy to answer any questions you've got if you're doing the same task. So what I'm going to do now is I'm probably going to put the camera away on this project until the new part arrives. Then I'll compare the new part to the old part. We'll get back on the car and hopefully I'll show you me firing it up. And that brings us to the end of part one of this video on how to diagnose and replace the turbo on this 2015 Jeep Renegade. Now again, I'm really sorry for the video cutting out earlier in this video and my battery going flat on the camera. I'll make sure that doesn't happen in part two. And in part two, I'm going to be receiving the part, unboxing it, reassembling the turbo, getting it back on the car, and also starting the car. So there will only be 2 parts to this video series as well. So in the next video, you'll see all of the assembly ready to get that turbo back together. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please go ahead, give me the thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, check out some of my other videos and subscribe to my channel.